Every single year, Apple updates the iPad, or iPad since they do have quite a few of them now. So get us next ready, and here's everything we know about all the iPads that are getting released in 2019. To make your iPad's display feel like actual paper when using the Apple Pencil, check out Paperlike using the link below. So back when Steve Jobs announced the original iPad in 2010, Apple was only selling that specific model, the iPad. There was no iPad mini, no iPad Pro, no iPad Air, or anything like that. Today in 2019, Apple is selling 5 different models of the iPad. Yes, 2 sizes of the iPad Pro, the brand new iPad Air, the new iPad that's just called the iPad, and then the iPad mini. The entire lineup is a mess. Well, actually, it was an even bigger mess before this. Okay, so what about 2019? First off, we have the iPad Pro. So the iPad Pro already got a massive update last year in 2018 when Apple removed the home button, reduced the top and bottom bezels considerably, added Face ID instead of Touch ID, redesigned the whole body to be even thinner and squared off now rather than that teardrop design like they had before. The Apple Pencil was now magnetically attachable to the side, so yeah, the 2018 iPad Pro was the biggest change ever to come to an iPad, ever since the original one was launched back in 2010. But you see, Apple loves keeping a design around for as long as possible. The 2019 iPhones will look identical to the 2018 and 2017 ones, and then let's not forget the iPhone 8, which looked identical from the front at least to the iPhone 7, the 6S, as well as the iPhone 6. Or let's not forget the 2019 iMacs, which from the front still look identical to the ones from 2009, 10 years ago. So unfortunately, we would not be getting any design changes with the 2019 iPad Pro. If we are getting a design change, that would be a stronger frame and a reposition mute button so that the bendgate issue isn't a problem anymore. This is something that Apple has actually done in the past with the iPhone 6s after that entire iPhone 6 bendgate controversy. The camera might be upgraded to a dual camera module, but even this isn't confirmed as of yet. And optical image stabilization would be nice to get back because the 2017 iPad Pro had it, which was then removed with the 2018 iPad Pro, fun fact. Honestly, the only reports that we've had in terms of the 2019 iPad Pro actually come from Economic Daily News and Ming-Chi Kuo, who both claim that Apple will start mass producing the new iPad Pro in Q4 2019 or even Q1 2020, so yeah, there's a very high chance that we won't see a brand new iPad Pro this year at all. Ming-Chi Kuo also said in April 2019 that his brand new iPad Pro will be using an LCP or liquid crystal polymer soft board to connect the components. So this would result in better networking performance, so the antennas will be redesigned and the signal loss would also be reduced. So yeah, better Wi-Fi and better LTE performance, but yeah, that's about it. And then of course that we would be getting the brand new Apple A13X processor, which would be based on a refined 7nm process. And then the Apple A14, which is coming out towards the end of 2020, that would be the big change that would be based on a 5nm process. And here's something interesting. So in late June 2019, ET News Korea reports that Apple is in discussion with Samsung on future iPads and MacBooks with OLED displays. Now, Apple has initially considered using micro LEDs, which is a superior technology, and that's the next big thing after OLEDs. But the micro-LED technology isn't ready as of yet, and apparently the only reason why Apple is considering OLED is because they owe Samsung hundreds of millions of dollars. Why? Well, essentially Apple was supposed to make a big OLED order for the iPhone 10 and the iPhone XS, but they didn't sell as many units, so you know, they didn't make that order which they were supposed to do in the end. So because of this, Apple has agreed to use Samsung's OLED displays in MacBooks and iPads. But unfortunately, this would not be happening this year, so no OLED iPad Pros or OLED MacBook Pros just yet. Now, Ming-Chi Kuo did report that Apple is also working on a 5G-enabled iPad Pro. This is pretty cool. However, again, it won't be launching until 2020, and only after Apple has also released the 5G iPhone first. The 2020 iPhone will indeed be Apple's first 5G iPhone, and since that would launch around September, the 5G iPad Pro should launch around October, November 2020 or so. So yeah, there's still some time to wait until then. And that iPad could also have thinner bezels, an OLED display, and alongside 5G, that's the iPad Pro that you should wait for. This year, we'll only get an S upgrade over the 2018 iPad Pro. Okay, so next up we have the iPad Air. And I know this is a very confusing name, and that's because in 2012, Apple released the iPad 4, and then a year later in 2013, instead of releasing the iPad 5, they released the iPad Air, which was the iPad 5 just with a different name. So yeah, really weird naming scheme. Anyways, in 2014, they launched the iPad Air 2, and that was it. We never got the iPad Air 3, as Apple decided to launch the iPad Pro, which was indeed the iPad Air 3, just at a much higher price. Then in 2019, we finally got that iPad Air 3. Only that, it was called the iPad Air with no number this time, but that's officially the iPad Air 3. And this new iPad Air, which launched in March, was actually pretty good. So it started at $500, which, fun fact, is the exact same price that iPads used to cost. And it featured the exact same design that the iPad Pro had in 2017. It did remove a lot of the features that the Pro had, like a ProMotion display. So yeah, unlike Apple's original iPads, it didn't have the latest and greatest tech, but it was still an amazing iPad for the price, plus it also supported the Apple Pencil. So in terms of the iPad Air, we won't be getting any more updates this year since, the new iPad Air was just released a few months ago in March 2019. Next up, we have the iPad mini. So just like the iPad Air, the iPad mini was also updated in March 2019 after almost 4 years of no updates. Now, the design remained the same as the Mini 4 from 2015, but we did get an Apple A12 processor, pretty impressive. So just like in the iPhone XS and XS Max and XR, we also got a True Tone display as well as Apple Pencil support. So yeah, it was a pretty good package overall. And then we have the iPad. Yes, the iPad that's just called the iPad. Yes, that entry-level iPad. So this is the one that hasn't been updated since 2017, and this is also the one that's getting the biggest update this year. So when Apple launched this iPad in 2017, they used an iPad Air 1 design from 2013, which yes, had no laminated display, and then they also added an Apple A9 processor. So it started at $329, and yes, this was the cheapest iPad that Apple has ever made. Which, of course it should be, because Apple's using a 4-year-old components. But then in 2018, Apple updated this with the A10 processor as well as the Apple Pencil. But yeah, that was pretty much it. The design has remained the same as on the 2013 iPad Air 1. And this year, we are getting some pretty big updates. So Ming-Chi Kuo did report in February 2019 that Apple was planning to launch a brand new 10.2-inch iPad as well as an iPad Mini 5. Now, we did indeed get the iPad Mini 5 in March 2019, but the 10.2-inch iPad was never released. Instead, we got a 10.5-inch iPad Air, so yeah, everyone believed that Ming-Chi Kuo was wrong. However, on July the 10th, 2019, yes, just a few days ago, Apple has registered not 1, not 2, not 3, but 5 new iPads in the ECC or Eurasian Economic Commission database. And these new models were the A2197, the A2228, the A2068, the A2198, and the A2230. Wait, what? So Apple's releasing 5 new iPads this year? No. You see, the iPads also have a cellular variant, and that cellular variant also uses a different model number. So my guess is that 2 of these model numbers are actually for the 11-inch iPad Pro, so Wi-Fi and cellular. 2 models are for the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, again Wi-Fi and then cellular. And then the last model, the 5th one, would be for this new entry-level iPad, just Wi-Fi only. Now, I am a bit skeptical when it comes to Apple dropping the cellular version from this entry-level iPad, but there are 5 models instead of 6, and Apple will surely not drop any cellular variant from the iPad Pro lineup. So yeah, dropping the cellular from the entry-level iPad means that people can upgrade, Apple can make people upgrade to the more expensive iPad Air if they do need LTE. So yeah, that does make sense. And then a tweet from a very interesting Twitter account called CoinX from March 2019 did claim that Apple would be releasing a 10.5-inch non-Pro iPad in 2019, as well as a brand new iPad 7th generation with a 10.2-inch display, and he did say that those 2 iPads will not be released at the same time. Now, you see, CoinX is a very interesting account, just because he only tweeted about 8 times, and all of his tweets were about unreleased Apple products, which actually ended up being released a few weeks or a few months after his tweets. So yeah, he is indeed a very reliable source, it seems. Now, the 10.5-inch iPad ended up being the iPad Air just a week after his tweets, but his new 10.2-inch iPad has yet to be released. And then a brand new report coming from Economic Daily News in July, so just a few days ago again, claims that the new 10.2-inch iPad will actually start mass production this month with a release in Q4 2019. So a 10.2-inch entry-level iPad, this will be a noticeable screen size increase from the current 9.7-inch display that we have now. But okay, how is this new iPad going to look like? Well, there are basically 2 design options for this. Apple could either keep the exact same 9.7-inch form factor that we have now, so that old iPad Air 1 design, and just make the display bigger and hopefully laminate it this time, or they could be using the iPad Air 3's design and have a 10.2-inch display rather than the 10.5-inch that we have now. So personally, I would prefer the current form factor with the 10.2-inch display because this way we'll have a device that sits right in between the iPad mini and the iPad Air in size, just like we have now, but with a larger display and much thinner bezel, so a much more modern design. So yeah, I do think that this would look really, really good. I love the idea, I love the way this looks, so hopefully Apple does do this. With the iPad Air 3's design with the small display, the bezels would indeed be quite thick, so I wouldn't really like this design at all. Plus, it would be harder for consumers to differentiate between the iPad Air and this new iPad, unless you look at it from the front to notice that 0.3 display size difference, because from the back and the sides, they would be pretty much identical. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this look, and which design option would you prefer. But these iPads will still have a Lightning port, so no USB-C as of yet, but they will be getting an updated processor, most likely the Apple A11 chip, since it would need to be inferior to the iPad mini 5, which actually does come with the Apple A12 and starts at $400. This entry-level iPad would very likely start from the same price like it does now, which is $330. But what I really love about this iPad is that aside from its low price point, we also have full Apple Pencil support. And yes, this is the first generation Apple Pencil, and yes, it is only 60 Hz versus 120 that we have on the iPad Pros, but still, it's such an amazing thing to have. So now in 2019, every single iPad actually supports the Apple Pencil. And if you do use the Apple Pencil, I highly recommend giving Paperlike a try. Paperlike is a thin screen protector that you apply to your iPad, and it makes the entire writing and drawing experience on the iPad feel like actual paper rather than the slippery glass feel that you normally have. So it heavily improves using the Apple Pencil on the iPad, and it works on the Mini, the Air, the Pro, pretty much all the iPads that support the Apple Pencil. Use the link below to try it out. You get 100% money back guarantee if you decide to return it, and you also get a 10% discount by using the link below. So in the end, I'm really looking forward to this new entry-level iPad. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this new iPad, and even though we won't be getting a brand new iPad Pro this year, or at least if we do, it would be a very small S upgrade with a new processor. iOS 13 on the iPad is coming out in September, called iPadOS, and this is also the biggest OS change ever that the iPad has ever got. So this is huge. We're getting a completely redesigned multitasking experience. We're getting a full dark mode support, a brand new home screen, a full desktop experience in Safari. We get full external hard drive support and even mouse support. Yes, iPadOS is a massive improvement. And this is what I'm personally looking forward to the most. A bug-free version of iPadOS so that I can use it on my main iPad. So yeah, let me know in the comments what do you guys think about all of these new iPads coming in 2019 and of course iPadOS, and if you want to see a separate video on iPadOS. But yeah, this has been pretty much it for this one. Thank you for watching. I'm Daniel and I'll see you guys in the next one. Enough Tech, signing out. Cheers.